Stand-up comedy isn't just about getting laughs. It's about reading a room, facing silence, and accepting that not every night will go your way. Today, we talk about what really happens behind the microphone.
Money isn't just math. It's emotion, fear, bad decisions, and occasionally denial. And today's guest has spent decades studying all of it, both on stage and in real life. He's seen market crashes, comedy hecklers, and senior softball players argue a close call like it's Game 7 of the World Series, usually while stretching something that didn't need to be stretched. Mike Parenti, a veteran financial advisor with nearly 40 years of experience at Camelot Wealth Management Partners in Boca Raton, Florida, is also a stand-up comedian who knows how to read a room in seconds, and a senior softball player where warm-ups are longer than the games and the MVP is the ice pack. By blending finance with stand-up comedy, Mike brings a rare perspective on why we do what we do, whether it's investing, performing, or attempting a sprint when no one asked for it. Mike Parenti, welcome to the Open Your Eyes podcast with Dr. Kerry Gelb.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, Doctor. I've never called you Doctor before. It's just Kerry, but that was a nice intro. Did you use chat to help you write that? It's beautiful.
I mean, I got to admit, I did get a little help, but it wasn't from that one.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you for that great intro. It sounds like I'm an important person on your show. It sounds great.
Well, people might ask, why am I having a comedian on my show? And comedy is very important to our health. It reduces stress hormones. So for people that are into health that watch my show, it lowers cortisol and adrenaline. It boosts our immune system by increasing antibodies such as the T cells. It protects the heart and increases blood flow throughout the body. Helps relieve pain by releasing endorphins, the body's natural painkillers, relaxes muscles to decrease tension, even burns calories and helps with breathing. And emotionally, laughing is great. It improves mood, of course. People are happy after they go to a comedy show or they've been having some belly laughs. And it really helps friendships of people laughing together. So comedy and laughing has so much health benefits. I want to ask you, what made you become interested in comedy and the guts to do stand-up?
Well, I always loved watching stand-up comedy. When I was dating my wife, we used to go to Manhattan, and she always wanted to go to restaurants. And I'd walk by those comedy clubs with those steps into the basement. And I was like, I always was fascinated by someone who could entertain me for an hour just by using some words. So I was always drawn to it, Kerry, even when I was very young, even 20 years before I started it. I always just loved good comedians. And live comedy is nothing like anything else. You never know what's going to happen. It's always different. And so I actually never watch comedy on TV or Netflix specials. I like it live, even if it's not that good. It's just this whole great experience that you can't duplicate, almost like a live baseball game. It's only going to be like that once. So I was always drawn to it, even before I started doing it.
With more screen usage and indoor time, myopia, also known as nearsightedness, is increasing and getting worse in children. Now, certified eye doctors can prescribe MiSight One Day, the first and only FDA-approved soft contact lens to slow myopia progression in age-appropriate children. Visit CooperVision.com to find a Brilliant Futures certified eye doctor near you. So I have to ask you, since you brought it up, who were your favorite comics growing up? I know for me, I used to go to Gotham and watch Louis Black, and I thought from the minute he opened his mouth to the minute he stopped speaking, people were on the floor. Now, on television, like you say, he's not as funny, and I don't laugh. But in person, I can't stop laughing.
Yeah, it's not interesting about that on television. It's just a little different vibe, right? You're not really in the audience aura of it. You don't have that same feeling. So it's just different on TV. Growing up, I mean, I thought Eddie Murphy was the funniest guy I ever heard. Chris Rock is amazing, and I listen to him. My favorite comedian right now is Sebastian Maniscalco, who's this Italian from Chicago, and he just complains about his parents and his kids and his wife. And my act is very similar because I talk about those type of events, and I could listen to that guy for hours. I think he's amazing.
And growing up, how did you feel about getting in front of the class? You were a young kid, and to give a speech, in school they have us make speeches a lot of
Yeah.
times. Were you nervous, or were you always that always came easy for you?
No, it never comes easy. That's one of the myths about comedy. I might look relaxed before I get up there, even to this day, but I'm not. I would say there are times where I have high anxiety and I have to actually excuse myself and pray in the bathroom just to calm myself down. I'm just a very competitive person and I kind of always want to push myself. And so standing up in front of people is a way that I'm competing with myself. And I tell my kids and my wife, if you're not nervous anymore, you're not living anymore. I mean, this is part of living. So I was never comfortable, but I was up for the challenge. Does that make sense?
Sure, sure. Tell us about the first time you did it and how you got the guts up to be able to do it, and where was it?
Oh, so this is a great story because I would have never done it otherwise. I was going to a church in North Shore Community Church in Long Island, and they were having a talent show. And the girl running the talent show was friends with my wife and I. And she knew I was humorous, so she asked me if I wanted to do comedy for 10 minutes. And I said, yeah, sure, why not? The church is the safest place to do it. These people who know you, they're going to laugh. And I knew that. And I went up there and I absolutely killed for 10 or 15 minutes. I pretty much just made fun of everyone that we were friends with. And that was the first time I ever got on stage and did comedy, was at the church talent show in Long Island 25 years ago.
And tell me about the high when you have a great performance. Tell me about how that makes you feel compared to a high from playing softball. You're a competitive softball player, a high from doing exercise. Tell me about that.
It's funny, Gary, because, it's so great and it lasts so long. Like softball might last the day, if I have a good game and I feel good about myself. Comedy can last for 3 days up to a week because what you're doing is you're having a subtle connection with 50 to 250 people that are with you for an hour, nodding and laughing for an hour straight. So there's this amazing connection you just made with everyone. And it's not always like that. A lot of the hours I do, I have some moments where it's amazing and then some moments where it's a little dead. So when I kill, and I know when I kill, it's like the world was put together just for that moment. It's like this is what I was meant to do. And so it's just an amazing feeling. Did I explain that okay?
Yes, fantastic. Now, I have to ask you the opposite. What happens when you bomb or a comic bombs? What's the feeling then?
It's funny because on the drive home, I'm thinking, what am I doing with my life here? Like, why am I even doing this? I don't make much money at it. I'm adding extra pressure to my life. I really don't need to be doing this because the money is kind of a side thing. You don't really make much money doing this thing. So it's terrible. And the better you are, the higher that bar gets set. So that, if you're a great softball player and you go 1 for 4, you feel like you had a bad game, right? But same thing with comedy. If people were with me and laughing, but not really with me like I want them to be, I kind of feel like I bombed. Like I feel like I should have done this, I should have done that. So it's a second guessing all the way home, and it lasts for days. And I'm trying to mentally get over that, Kerry. I'm trying to mentally put that to bed faster. I just don't know how.
And to try to put it behind you, just like a bad softball game,
Yeah.
or to put it behind you. Do you have any techniques that you use to try to put it behind you?
Yeah, I would. I could use some more. I need a Doc Kerry. Maybe you give me some more. But one of the things I tell my kids is, if I go 0 for 4 in softball and miss 3 balls in the outfield, no one remembers except me. Like
Right.
I'm the only one obsessing about it on the way. And on a comedy show on the way home, no one's talking about me on the way home. They're on to their next issue. So I'm trying to just keep it in perspective. And I'm trying to also say, I don't want to get corny, but I mean, God put this comedy thing in me. It's in me. It's always going to be in me. And I'm doing what I think I'm called to do. And that means striking out sometimes. That means, it's all part of the process. But uh, so I'm trying to just put it like it's in the scheme of things in life. It's not that important. but it's easier said than done. I think you know that from playing ball.
For sure, for sure. I hold on to things longer than I should, and I know the feeling. So let me ask you about the jokes. How do you write a joke? Where does it come from? The experience. How does that come about? Where you have some new material or different material?
Well, I'll tell you, I love this topic too because I love comedy. Joe, I have ADHD. If I'm talking to somebody and they're not interesting or they're talking about themselves, I'm checking out very early mentally. And as a comic, that's actually a good tool because I realize people are like me and I need to get to the point quickly. So when people tell me these jokes that have three people go to heaven and the first guy does this, in my mind, I'm like, this joke is too long. Like, this is too long. One person goes to heaven. So what a comic does is he finds out, Kerry, where the punchline is and he works backwards and tries to get there as quick as possible. He doesn't have this long story to get to the punchline. So I know when I'm around during the day at Publix, if something funny happens, I build that as the punchline, and then I try to get there as quickly as possible. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you write it down so you don't forget by the time you get home, or
Well, I'll text it to myself, or I'll do a TikTok video. TikTok videos are 15 seconds, almost as a test. I'll put it out there just to see how it sounds. So every punchline should be about 15 seconds. And so it's a good tool to practice a joke.
And I notice with comedians, a lot of them could be very handsome or pretty as a female, but they have a way of accentuating something on their body that's funny to make them look funny just by looking at them. What do you do to do that?
Well, I don't want to draw extra attention to myself, but the theory behind that, Kerry, is that if you make fun of yourself, you could make fun of other people. So that's the theory behind that. If otherwise it comes off as mean spirited. If I just went into the audience and started making fun of people the way they were dressed, what they were wearing, what they look like who the heck is this guy? But if I make fun of myself first, that I'm old and I can't bend down, then I could make fun of another old guy who can't bend down. So that strategy is just to kind of bring people say, listen, I know I'm not great here. So I have a lot of stuff about my wife, and first thing I do is tell everyone how beautiful she is and considerate, compassionate. She's a better person than me, and then I make fun of her
Right.
because it's a different mindset. So he doesn't love his wife; he just doesn't like some things she does. So that's why people do that.
And the comedy seems to have changed. Back in the old days, there was a lot of one-liners. People told jokes. Now it's more about storytelling. Tell me about why comedy has changed, or maybe I'm looking at it differently. But it seems from the one-liners of the old days, the vaudeville guys, the guys that used to stand up in the Borscht Belt and used to tell the one-liners compared to today.
Yeah. So Rodney Dangerfield was the king of one-liners. In a space of 60 seconds, he probably would give you 6 jokes, which is unbelievable because he just had line, punchline, line, punchline, line, punchline. First of all, it's really hard to do that as a comedian. I can't remember. I couldn't even. It's in the course of an hour. Do you know how much material that is now? So I think storytelling is a little easier, quite frankly, because I'll tell a story and it takes a little longer and it eats up a little more time. Plus, it's more my personality. I'm not a one-line person. So I think comedy has evolved, but there are still guys that do one-liners and there's storytellers, but there are a lot more storytellers now. I think it's a little more acceptable. Years ago, if I perform for some of those old audiences, they just want the punchline. They don't want anything in between. I could read a book of punchlines, and sometimes I think they'd enjoy it more.
And you mentioned about remembering. Do comics use notes, or do they use a computer or their phone to help them remember what they're going to speak about? Just like a lecturer. I do medical lectures, and we use PowerPoint. That's a way of cheating for us
Yeah.
to know what to say. What do you guys do?
Everyone is different. I've seen comics after 10 years and they have the same exact act, word for word. I don't do a word for word act. I have topics, like one of my topics is senior softball. The only way I could remember the material is when I'm telling the story, I'm getting out of my car, I'm meeting someone, I'm walking to the field, And then I talk about the guys in the dugout. Then I talk about going to first base, second base, third base, home. So in my mind, I'm journeying around the field, and then I go to the outfield. So my jokes are in sequence to what's actually happening. That's the only way I could remember them. Does that make sense?
Sure, sure.
So I'm actually walking through my joke in my memory of playing softball. So it always starts getting out of the car, seeing these people with, handicap signs, getting out of their car and making diving catches. You know what I mean? So, but it starts with getting out of the car.
And we're
So
going to talk a lot about senior softball in a little bit. But I just want to, as we talk about comedy, now there's the clean comics and the dirty comics. And you're a clean comic.
yeah.
Tell me about the difference between the clean comics, the dirty comics, and what the psyche is with those comedians.
When I first started, I wasn't clean, I wasn't disgusting, but I talked about, some intimate subjects just because I didn't know what to talk about. And people, you feel like you have the freedom when you're a comedian to talk about anything, and people want to hear all this crazy stuff. But I'm not. I'm clean and I don't curse hardly ever. So why am I going to curse on stage? So when you own some people on stage are really dirty. They're just dirty. Like you talk to them, that's the way they talk. And I'm not. I like dirty comics if they're funny. I don't really care. I think whatever your personality is, you want to go on stage. And I think most people, especially when they start, Kerry, they don't have enough material, so they want to talk about farting and body parts. It's funny a little bit, but if your whole act is that, I don't think it's that great. So it's a lack of material, generally speaking, why people do dirty comic, or they're just dirty and that's what they like.
And what has stand-up taught you about yourself as a person?
I don't know. I would say, Kerry, when it comes to giving investment advice, sometimes people call me and I could sound like a robot and say, oh, we need to do asset allocation and diversification. But what I'm realizing is I walk through, like, people want real people. And on stage, if you're not real, the people in the audience smell you out. Like, they don't like that. They want a real person who tells them the truth and it can share their life. And I think the more I'm on stage, the more I'm actually sharing my thoughts about life. And that's why sometimes it's a little frustrating. I don't do any politics, but I do have strong opinions about it. But I feel like I can't share that. I think that would be good for me to share just as a person. But I think in general, it's made me be okay with just who I am. Like, it's okay.
Since you brought that up, what gets the biggest laugh? So you don't do politics. Is it money jokes, wife jokes, religion, what friends, softball? What gets the most laughs?
So with me, most of my audiences are 55 and over. I'm at a lot of these retirement communities. And I would say with those guys, they like the wife stuff, like wife spending too much money. I said we had identity theft recently. And, I let the guy keep my Macy's card because he spends less money than my wife. Like, people love that. Like, it's a simple joke. But again, I set it up because I love my wife. But we are men and women. I don't think we could be any more different. Me and my wife could not be any more different. She's Puerto Rican. I'm Italian. She talks like, to everyone about everything. And I'm more of like a cat. I'm like more of a private person. So I'm sorry. What was the question?
So which subject do you think gets the most laughs?
I think, Gary, whatever's you're most passionate about will get you the most laughs. If you're an impatient driver, people love that. It's got to be something everyone can relate to. Everyone can relate to driving, kids, wife, money, everyone. And, so I think relatable subjects like that, for me, the wife stuff just kills. People just love the wife stuff that I do.
So your audience is mostly over 55. You're in South Florida. You're Italian. Italian and Jews are kind of similar.
Yeah.
But you have to be performing at some of these old Jewish places. How does that go over with the old Jewish jokes with being Italian?
Well, Kerry, it's funny because when I first came down here and they asked me to perform in Boca and Boynton, which is very Jewish, I didn't do very well. Like, believe me, I didn't bomb, but it wasn't very good. I couldn't get them like really laughing, but I figured them out. They love to talk about wives spending money. They love that subject. And also, I talk about how, like an Italian, I'll have them come in and do my plumbing in my house. But if I need heart surgery, I want a Finkelstein, a Goldstein, or a Schwartz. Now, that's an old joke, but it's true. Like, I've been down here now. I've used Italian doctors. They're terrible. Like, so what you do is, if you could compliment them like that, they love it. So I've been mixing in a lot of the Italian stuff, which is, we're weird people, but so I'm sticking with wives, money, Italians, and it's all universal. And I'm doing much better down there than I used to.
And tell me about timing. Tell me about timing with a joke. How important is timing?
If you wrote the joke right, you don't have to worry about the timing. If you have the punchline where it's supposed to be and you leave it to last, the timing, you could pause, you don't have to pause. My pausing depends on how my audience is cooperating. If I have an audience that is laughing, but they're not really killing, I'll do a lot less pausing and just they want the punchline. So I'll just give it to them quickly, right? If I have an audience that's loving every word I say, I'll hold that punchline back for a second, look around, and then I'll deliver it. But it all depends on how they're reacting to me. Same thing, Kerry, when you out to dinner with people, you can see when you're talking, some people like want you to get to it, or they don't. Or some people embellishing everything. So you got to read the audience there.
And how can being a stand-up comic help somebody like myself who gives a lot of lectures with medical lectures, because that's where I was thinking about timing.
Yeah.
And how can what you do help somebody like me who gives medical lectures?
Kerry, there is nothing harder than doing stand-up comedy. Your medical lectures will be a breeze if you do some stand-up comedy, because stand-up comedy, you're going to have some really rough spots. I'm not saying what you do is easy. I'm saying in comedy, you're going to have some rough spots where you're expecting a laugh and you didn't get it, and then another laugh and you didn't get it. It gets very uncomfortable. So you have to really get thick skin after a while, and also learn how to bob and weave a little bit. So the best, I would think everyone in the United States should wait on tables and be a waiter for a year and do stand-up comedy for a year. I think I think my son does stand-up comedy, and I've seen him just be a way better person and much more confident in your abilities. So I would say, Kerry, you'll just be more confident in the delivery. Even if it doesn't go well, you'll be fine. It's easier than just making up jokes out of the air. I would highly suggest you take some classes.
Oh, thank you. I think that's great advice. And I've
Yeah,
seen your
highly.
son. He's excellent. Your son is excellent.
Yeah.
How do you know when a joke is kind of almost working or it becomes dead? I'm not going to use that joke anymore.
Sometimes I've dropped jokes out just because I kind of forgot about them, and I've moved on to new material. And then I hear an old video. I'm like, oh, why did I drop that joke? That's a great joke. And then I'll bring it back. So what happens is, Kerry, as your life is evolving, and mine too, we have new material. We have new experiences. I have a whole thing about my grandkids now I didn't have when I performed for you. So I have all that material. So I think things just naturally drop out if you're a working comedian. I don't think. Now, sometimes if you're not getting a laugh where you're supposed to, it means the joke's no good, or you have to change the way you tell it. That's all. You have to just change the joke or drop it out. But most times things get dropped out just because you're evolving as a comic and you're moving on to new material.
So is it harder writing the joke or delivering it?
It's both hard. Delivering the joke for me is easy. It's not getting the response that I'm expecting and then knowing what to do next. So, for instance, if I have a bit on softball, which I do, that bit goes about 7 or 8 minutes. But if I'm 3 minutes in and it's not really resonating just by the laughs I'm hearing, I have to decide if I want to move along or not to another topic.
So do you ever just improv? You have your kind of your script that you go by, but you ever say, I'm just going to improv tonight and see what happens?
Yeah, well, I don't have a script. I have topics. I have senior softball, I have dogs, I have planes, I have my wife, I have my son, I have my mother, I have my grandkids. So I don't know what order I'm going to do them in before I get on stage. I take it like I'm out to dinner. I don't have I just kind of go with what I'm feeling at that point. So I don't have a script. What was your question? What was your original question?
No, so do you ever like just improv and like say, okay, I'm gonna I'm going to do something totally different. I'm not going to use my topics. I'm going to use, this guy in the back gave me an idea. I'm just going to go with it.
I do improv, but a lot less than I used to because I have so much material and my material I know is good. I don't know what's going to happen with the improv. I'm not afraid to do it and I'll do it, but it could hit or miss. And I feel like when I'm going well, any audience participation is interrupting my flow. Like I never used to feel like that. I used to welcome it and see if I can get a little back and forth because you could get huge laughs on some improv. But lately, they just, and then he asks someone a question and there's like a 2 or 3 second pause. I'm like, you're killing me. I got to go. So I'm finding as I do more comedy, I'm doing less improv. I'm not afraid of it, but I don't really do it anymore. I don't need to do it.
I have a friend who played softball with Larry David before he was famous.
Oh,
And he
yeah.
used to go to Larry David's stand up. And he said Larry David would constantly fight with the audience. That was his shtick, to fight with the audience. What do you think about fighting with the audience? How does that work?
Larry Dave, that's his personality. If you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, he fights with people all day. He walks around and everyone's mad at him all the time. I think it's perfect for him. He is being who he is. There's a comic, R.C. Smith in Naples, Florida area. I've never seen anybody like him. All he does is talk to people for an hour. That's all he does. And he has some set comebacks, but every time you see him, it's an original because he's going to make fun of everyone. Man, that's hard. You got to really be on your game to do that the whole time. He doesn't really have any other act except talking to people. The guy's amazing. That's his gift, and it's not mine.
How do you deal with a heckler?
If I'm going good, there is no hecklers because they're enjoying the show. If you're having hecklers, either they're really drunk or you're not doing very well. So if I'm not doing very well, I'll just talk over them. If you address them, you're asking for a problem. Now I'm kind of loud on stage. You've seen, and I could get really loud. So I'll put the mic by my thing, and I'll just go even louder. I'll just drown them out. I don't want to get in debate with a drunk person. Now, if
Sure.
they're kind of a friendly heckler, I might make fun of them a little bit.
And which is worse, a heckler or quiet?
As I tell people, anything but silence. I'd rather have a heckler than quiet. Silence is the worst. Like you just start sweating and then you start rushing, and which is terrible. Silence is often for. I don't even like silence in between jokes. I don't even mind a little murmuring in the crowd about the previous joke. No, a comic and silence are like kryptonite.
And how about, do you have to censor yourself with certain things? You said you don't do politics, but is there other things that you may censor yourself in?
No, because I'm clean, it really doesn't matter. But if I'm at, I do a lot of religious institutions. I do churches and Christian coffee shops. You know, quite frankly, I won't even say the word sex. I mean, that is not appropriate for those venues. So if I really want to go there, by censoring myself, I say I call it intimacy. Who initiates intimacy? Now that's pretty harmless. Like you could pretty much do that in a church if you wanted to. So I'll just tone down what I think the words are that people might not love.
So what do you think? Open mic or headlining? Which more pressure?
Open mic. Where'd you get that question from? That's a great question.
Just studying comedy, and
Have you
because
seen Have you seen an open?
I prepare, a lot when I do an interview, and
Yeah.
I learned about what it's like to be a comic, and that comes up a lot in preparation.
Well, it's a great question. I don't think anybody ever asked me that question. You did a good job preparing. I don't know if people know an open mic for comics is basically they go into like a bar, they have a little stage in the corner. Comics come and practice their material while virtually no one is listening. It is brutal, and so you don't even know if you're funny or not. Because now there might be times when you get a small crowd and people listen, but for the most part, an open mic is where comics practice their craft, and it's impossible because you don't get any feedback from the audience, which is awful. I ran an open mic in Long Island for like 6 years. I ran the mic. No. And after 2 or 3 weeks, I stopped doing material because nobody was listening to me. And I just started talking to the audience members. Now, most of it wasn't funny, but it made me comfortable with not hearing laughs every second. So I feel like an open mic is really a challenge, and you have to really challenge yourself and not worry about getting laughs. It's good practice, don't get me wrong, but I'll take a show of 1,000 people 100 times over.
So, what's one trait that every great comedian shares?
You ever been out to dinner with boring people?
Right, sure.
Why are they boring?
Yeah, they don't have much to say. They're not interesting. They're dull.
They don't know how to tell a story.
Yeah.
They don't. They start at some place that's not interesting, and they force it down your throat. And it's really at the end of the rainbow. There's really nothing interesting there or a punchline. I think comics, for the most part, know how to tell a story. They just know, they could relate an experience from the day before in a way that's quick, to the point, and has some humor in it. And storytelling takes practice and time, and some people are naturally wired to it, or others. I just think it's a gift about, how to tell stories. Like Sebastian Maniscalco, the guy knows how to tell a story. It's hilarious.
And comedy today, compared to the old days, harder today, better today, or not as good?
I don't know, but I think it must be harder because people get offended about everything now. Like, you could lose half your audience if you tell them which way you voted. Like, years ago, I don't know if you watch some comedy, man, they could say anything racist. Everything was fine on stage. You could say whatever you wanted. You were safe. That was a safe space to say anything you wanted, no matter how terrible it was. But that's just not the case anymore. If I had a couple of bad words at the wrong time, I could lose a lot of work.
Right, sure.
That didn't happen years ago. People just like, that's Lenny Bruce. He's crazy, but he's great.
I saw Jerry Seinfeld in Las Vegas, and he's clean.
Yeah,
And he's good. He tells stories. He's very good. Obviously, I would assume he has a lot of help writing his material. He's not doing it all himself, but
he's got
very good.
Yeah. Have you seen Dave Chappelle?
I never saw him in person.
If you watch Dave Chappelle, it looks like he's not doing comedy. It looks like you're in his house having a beer with the guy at the kitchen table. It's that natural. Like, you don't even know a punchline is coming. The guy knows how to tell a story. The guy's amazing. He's an amazing comic.
And what do you think of Don Rickles? When he would,
I love Don Rickles. I think he's hilarious. When I used to watch the roast, those celebrity roast years ago with Dean Martin, he used to destroy everyone. I thought he was great. I think that guy is one of the best comics ever.
Did you ever watch The Gong Show?
I love Chuck Berry. I love that show.
That was always great to be able to see how those comics could tell a joke off some crazy subject.
Yeah, I love that show. I had parents who, my TV was my babysitter when I was a kid. I watched way too much TV.
With more screen usage and indoor time, myopia, also known as nearsightedness, is increasing and getting worse in children. Now, certified eye doctors can prescribe MySight One Day, the first and only FDA-approved soft contact lens to slow myopia progression in age-appropriate children. Visit CooperVision.com to find a Brilliant Futures certified eye doctor near you.